Bonjour, good afternoon, and welcome to WASA Distance Education. My name is Greg Weaver, and this is ENG3C Grade 11 College Prep English. Let's welcome everyone listening across the North today at home, your learning center, or on Bell ExpressView. To call in and join our class, you can call 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017 or 2983 in the Sioux Lookout, Lac Seul, or Dryden areas. Let's welcome everyone back to class today. This is our last class of the week. And then we will have 2 weeks of class left after tomorrow. A reminder that WASA will be closed next Friday, as well as the following Monday for Easter. And we have no class on Monday as a result of the holiday. So what we're doing today, we're going to finish off lesson 14, and then we're going to get started with lesson 15. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time looking at lesson 14. We've gone through the stages of the essay. We've gone to different parts. We've gone through what you have to do with it. We're going to quickly look at the topic you're going to have to do, and then we're going to jump right into lesson 15. If, when you start working on your essay, you get stuck, you just don't understand, you want to check something, give me a call, let me know, email me, text me, Facebook me, and we can set up a Bridget class in my office. You can call and talk to me, or I can call you, and we can work through it case by case as needed. Because everyone's going to write something a bit different, so it's going to be really hard to do something overall in general. So we'll quickly just go over what you have to do, and then we'll move on. So you're doing key question 19, which you can find on page 49 of unit number 3. So you're looking at your reflections about what's happened in the novel. So I'll try to sit back and reflect on the novel as a whole. Hopefully, you found an enjoyable story with some interesting characters. If not, you need to consider what exactly you felt was wrong with the book. So you want to think about that. Oops. Sorry, I was still far ahead. Next lesson, my apologies. There we are. This is what we're looking at. So we're looking at page 37, sorry. So you're going to put all skills and knowledge together into an essay looking at discrimination. To generate your thesis, don't forget to follow the 3 steps discussed at the beginning of this lesson. You need to then fill in the essay plan on page 32 to ensure you have enough evidence for an essay on your message that you will include all the required elements in the correct order as well. And remember that a sample layout is given to you, and that's on page 32, and you need to complete that outline as part of this key question. It is worth marks as well, so it has to be completed. So once you read through your essay plan, you need to create a rough draft and then edit, and then do your good copy. So, thinking of all of that, you're going to write an essay analyzing the topic of discrimination. So you derive 4 points from an essay. So if we go to page 37, you'll see our outline, or what you have to fill in, just to kind of get your ideas focused, get your ideas going for the essay. So see there. So look at discrimination. So you could look at different types of discrimination. That's one option. So you look at the racism that Tom Robinson faces, the sexism that Scout faces, and the just the general um, oldism or the distaste that they have for some of the older people that scout and gem direct to some of the older people in the neighborhood. Another option would be to look at three different characters and explain how they are discriminated against. So what happens to them? So instead of looking at different types, you can go based on the characters. Another option would be to explain why do you think it chose to focus in on discrimination. So you want to think of what is the theme of discrimination? How is the, or you could go on what, your theme is discrimination. How is that theme or that idea supported through the actions and the events of the essay? So you can look at that and figure that out. So there's lots of different options that are available. The choice is up to you as to what you want to write about and how you want to focus in on discrimination. So I've given you 4 ideas so far for possible topics. If you come up with another topic you think would be really, really good, before you start doing everything, give me a call, email, text, or Facebook me, and let me know what you are planning to do. And the reason why I want you to do that is, Mike, that we can let you know that either, yeah, you're really good points, you're really good, or you may want to maybe rethink and change a bit of stuff around. Make sure there's enough information that is available for what you want to write about. So with that in mind, once you've chosen your topic, you're going to complete the outline. Now, you want to think about the hook. You can probably wait for a bit about to finish the rest of it. But what are the 3 points that you are going to talk about? Think about what are the 3 major big ideas you're going to use to prove this thesis. You're going to use to prove what goes on. So once you have those 3 ideas, you are going to have those become your 3 proofs, your 3 main points that you're going to expand on and explore in your 3 body paragraphs. And then you're going through and get some more detail over each of those 3 points, creating it to at least 3 points for each of those, for each point in the body paragraph. And you have that for all 3 points there. And then you have your conclusion. Your conclusion is just wrapping up in different words what you already said and examining what's happening. Now, when you do your rough draft, you have 2 options. You can either do it on lined paper, or you can do it on a computer. So I'm going to show you how you could do it if you're doing it on a computer. So what you would do is you would think about what you're going to write about, and you would get that going. So try to see if I have our example I had from last year's class. I don't seem to have that one left over from last year, so we won't worry about it. So first thing when you want to type out, first thing you want to do, you want to go File, Save As, and you want to save it as key question 17. And we call it draft. Now, the reason why you want to save it as that is, as we get to the right spot here, save it. That you know, and when you head in, I'll know that this is the draft copy of this question. And then you go ahead and all you do is just start typing. And don't worry about spelling, grammar, or anything like that. All you have to worry about is getting your ideas down. So that's the first thing to focus on, type your ideas out. Once everything's done, you go through and you change it from being key question 17 draft to key question 17 good copy. And once you have a good copy, that's when you run your spell check, your grammar check, you correct any typos, you move things around. That's when you do everything. When you are doing your rough draft, the only thing you are doing is typing it out. Don't worry about misspelled words, grammar, typos, don't worry about anything. Just type your ideas out. The reason why I want you to do that is so I can see when I mark this what changes you made from your rough draft to your good draft. And that is key question 17. And that is where we're going to leave off for lesson 14 as well. So once again, any questions, once you get to this question, if you have any trouble, let me know, and I will work with you one-on-one to answer any questions that you have. The editing checklist that refers to in the key question can be found in the suggested answers, and you can find that on page 56. Page 56 of unit number 3. So we're going to jump right into lesson 15 now. This is our doing some research and reporting. So I expect that this lesson we'll work on today and Monday and probably a bit of Tuesday's class as well. And that will take us to the end of unit 3. So we're looking at research and reporting. So it's important to consider the historical events behind a novel that is set in the past, because it will often provide additional understanding about the motivations of the characters. So we're going to be looking at the 1930s and what some of the changes and the hard choices that had to be made during that time. You will research certain topics about the 1930s and discuss the implications of those issues on the events and characters of the novels. You will examine the meaning of Harper Lee's selected How to Kill a Mockingbird, because it's only ever mentioned once. And then finally, once you have all that done, you'll be writing a book review, examining what's either positive, what's good, or the negative, what's bad about reading this novel. Now, if you still haven't finished reading the novel itself, try and get that done as soon as you can. If you can get it done this weekend, that'd be perfect, because there's a lot of things that go along with this. Now, once we start Unit 4 next week, if you're still struggling with some of the assignments, let me know. I prefer if you kept up with what we do in Unit 4, and always have time to come back to your essay, or your research report, your book review you're going to do in this lesson later on. Just because some of these assignments in Unit 4 are a bit easier than the material in this one, in this unit. So here's some background on the 1930s. Now, you may have read about this or learned about this in your grade 9 in history course, and a bit touched. I know Plar did touch a little bit on it as well. But in many courses, you examine the historical setting in detail before you read the work. For example, it often helps for the reader to know what his time period was like before they read his plays, so they understand why there are so few stage directions and why his topics seem very far-fetched and set in different places. And the reason why there's so few stage directions in Shakespeare's plays is because he would normally direct his own plays, so he would know exactly where and when characters and actors were going to be doing, so he didn't write them in. He knew exactly what was going to happen. And why some versions of the play are different from other versions. And that's because Shakespeare didn't actually publish any of his own plays. He put them on at the Globe Theatre in London, but he didn't ever have them published. So other people used his rough copies, or if they remember, they wrote down their lines from memory, so his plays could be published after his death. And in Shakespeare's case, the first copies that were written down and published are known as the first folio. If you ever come across that term later on, that's what it is. In this case, though, To Kill a Mockingbird can stand alone. Through television, movies, and other life experiences, most people have a vague understanding that the first half of the 20th century was a hard time to live in. And it was even harder if you happened to be black. Now, why we say that is in the first half of the 20th century, you had the turn of the century and a really big economic boom, followed by World War I. And World War I was called the war to end all wars because no one could grasp or understand exactly how big the conflict would be. Everyone thought it would be a really quick 3-month war, and that'd be it. Because in the past, that is what had happened. In the wars from about 1850, 1860, all the way up to even 1910. They've been really short wars, and then everything was hammered out or negotiated at the treaty table once all the fighting was over. After the war ended, you had millions and millions of people dead. Canada lost 60,000, mostly men, killed in the war, and over 100,000 that were wounded. The U.S. lost about 125,000 dead and about 250,000 wounded. Britain, Germany, Russia, and France lost millions. Once that came out, you had what's known as the Roaring Twenties. So all the 1920s, from about 1919, 1920, all the way to April 1929, the economy was booming. People had lots of money. People like to spend a lot of money. So people were buying a lot of things on credit. So they were saying, I'll pay you a little bit now, you give me the item, and then I'll pay you back later. And then you had the stock market crashed in 1929, where the stock market, where people were investing their money, lost all its value. So people were wiped out. They had no money left. Banks folded, shut down, so the people lost their life savings, and all that happened at that time. So because that happened, we led into what's known as the dirty 30s. And that's when the economy was horrible. People were out of work. Factories were shut down. We already talked about before, there was a big drought in the Canadian prairies and the U.S. Midwest, where they used to grow a lot of agriculture. There was massive winds. There was not enough rain, so the soil was very dusty, and you had massive winds turn it into a dust bowl, where all the dust would blow around and would just strip the soil. So farmers couldn't farm. People in the cities couldn't find work, and everyone had a hard time. And if you were black in the United States, it was even worse, because after the U.S. Civil War, blacks not only had the right to vote and were citizens, they weren't slaves. However, a lot of the former slave states in the southern U.S. made it a requirement that you have to know how to read and write, or you have to own a certain amount of property in order to be able to vote. And they stripped away the power and the rights that black people had. They were always assumed that they were up to no good. They were committing crimes. And several of them, hundreds of them, were hanged without trial, were lynched based on different slights or different insults that they may have given. And we'll look more at that later on. And the Dirty 30s didn't fully end until World War II started in 1939. With World War II, governments in Britain, France, and Canada and the US started pumping millions of dollars into weapons, ships, tanks, and a lot of people got back to work, either through working in factories or men enlisted in the army. The drought ended, they were able to plant more crops, so there was a lot more economic opportunity after that, but it wasn't until World War II started that the economy jumped back up. So within that context, that's what was happening when Harper Lee set her story. This is set in 1935 or 1936, depending on when you date it from. When the let's go talk about the inauguration of Franklin Roosevelt, who was the U.S. president in 1933. So it's either so it either starts in summer of 1933, and that when she's 6, it ends when she's 9. So summer of 1935, 1936 is when it ends. So with all that, why should we even bother studying it then? Well, now we have explored the theme, which is discrimination, in great detail. You just wrote your essay on it. It may help you to step back from the novel again and think about discrimination in the real world. Remember, that is where we started this journey. Talking about discrimination and how it occurs in today's society. So as well, our writer grew up during the same era as Scout. Harper Lee was born in the late 1920s. Her life experiences may help us further understand what Scout's character was like and why she acted the way she did. So Harper Lee started a novel in the same decade she herself grew up. In fact, Lee includes many details in the story that match her own early experiences in life. So looking at key question 18, it's our first key question for this lesson. And it's just a quick summary. So what you want to do is you want to examine a website that provides a biography of Harper Lee. as you are reading, think about how her childhood and her childhood experiences affected the content of To Kill a Mockingbird. For example, notice that her sister's middle name was Finch, which is Scout's last name in the novel. So you want to print out the original source. So your biography. So whether show you different sources you can use, and then write a half page to 1 page summary of that biography, examining how Harper Lee's early life impacted her novel. Be sure to use specific examples from the novel itself. Your summary will be evaluated out of 10 based on the depth of comparisons that you generate and your use of specific examples from the text to back up your comparisons. So we're going to fire up our search engine here, and we're going to find some information on Harper Lee. So first we're just going to Google Harper Lee biography. And now there's lots of links here. So I just did that. And I already have lots of different links here. So I'm going to choose this one here, biography.com. We'll open that one up. We'll open up Wikipedia. And we're going to open up the harperlee.com. This is her own website. And then we'll so go to biography here first. So this is one example of some of a biography for her. So synopsis, early life, and everything else that goes along with that. So read some of this. So it says Harper Lee was born April 28th, 1926 in Monroeville, Alabama. So that's where she was born. So if we go ahead and we Google that and try and find out where that is, we'll go to Google Maps, and we're going to search for him. Monroeville, Alabama. So this is where she's born. This is the city. And we zoom out a bit, we see how close we are to everything. So here we have Mobile, and that's the capital, and that she talks about where her father Agus always goes for the state legislature. This is where it is. And so we have Monroeville is way up there. Let's look at this. What we see is we see the river that I kept talking about, how you have the different rivers that come up and run from everywhere. And she said that Finch's Landing was right by a river. And we see here we have Majors Creek that runs right up by the town. So in 1959, so she was 33, she finished the manuscript for her Pulitzer Prize-winning bestseller novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. She then helped her friend Truman Capote write an article for the New Yorker, which evolved into his famous book, In Cold Blood. Her second novel was never published. That is actually incorrect. They just announced about 2 months ago that they found a second manuscript or a second rough draft of a story that looks at the same characters of Scout, Jem, and Dill, but it's set in the 1950s. So it's set about 20 years after To Kill a Mockingbird ends. And they expect that will be released. That novel will be released probably around Christmas time. So, famed author Nellie Harper Lee was born March 28, 1926, in Monroeville, Alabama. She's known for writing To Kill a Mockingbird, her one and only novel. Her youngest of 4 children. She grew up in a tomboy in a small town. Well, who does that sound like? Tomboy in a small town. Sounds just like Scout. Her father was a lawyer, a member of the Alabama State Legislature, and owned part of a local newspaper. Sounds pretty similar to what Atticus does. For most of her life, her mother suffered mental illness, rarely leaving the house. It's believed she may have had bipolar disorder. Sounds kind of like Boo Radley, doesn't it? Never leaving the house. Her closest friends were another writer to be Truman Capote, then known as Truman Persons. Covered the many of the boys, Lee often stepped to serve as Truman's protectors. Truman also shared few interests with boys his age, who picked on being a sissy and his fancy clothes he wore. While the two friends are very different, they both shared different home lives. Truman's living with his mother's relatives in town after largely being abandoned by his own parents. Sounds just like Dill. So in high school, she had interest in English literature. She graduated in 1944, attended Huntington College. She's one of other students. She didn't have careless about fashion, makeup, or dating. She focused on her studies and on her writing. And then she talks about she transferred to the University of Alabama. She's known for being loner and individualist. So all this details here you can read up on your own about. But just tells you a bit about what happens. So we quickly keep scanning this. 1949, she graduated and moved to New York City. And then she kept her made friends, and finally she got working and wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. And so she worked with Truman Capote, who was her best friend based on Dill. And talks more about just that and how it ties back in with everything. Talked about To Kill a Mockingbird then. It came out and how it was pretty initial wasn't a whole big, but then it got picked up and won the Pulitzer Prize, which is the prize for some of the best writing in the United States. And it was turned into a movie very quickly. And the character of Agatha based on Lee's fire, we've already figured it out. Afterwards, she never published another novel. She was pretty quiet. A lot of stuff didn't really happen. And she pretty much just faded into the background. And this is what I was just talking about here. In February 2015, 55 years after a novel To Kill a Mockingbird was published, it was announced that 88-year-old Lee would publish her second novel, Ghost Set a Watchman. But consider to feature a memorable character, Scout, as an adult. And that will be coming out later on. So that's one website for Harper Lee. She has her own website here. And we look at, this is her own written by her or by a staffer. So it's, once again, gives a bit more detail about her family, descended from Robert E. Lee, a Civil War general. She was born in Monroeville, Alabama, and everything goes along with that. So you'll find that everything is fairly similar, but this one gives a bit more detail about To Kill a Mockingbird itself. And pretty short. And then the last one we're going to quickly look at, running out of time, is her Wikipedia page. Now, this is probably the most detail in there. Um, and it's will be a bit more detailed, but some stuff may be not as interesting or as not needed. One thing this does talk about her upcoming novel, and it says coming July 14th, 2015. And that is a bit more detail for her. You see there's a whole lot here and a lot more detail. So what you want to do is you want to read them over, choose one. You can print it off at your learning center, or when you hand in your assignment, copy down the web address. So copy out exactly what the web address is, whether it's Wikipedia, whether it's biography.com, or it's something else. And that way I can go and look it up myself and see how similar it is. We don't have access to a printer. I know some students are emailing in their work. So try and work on that if you can. And we will pick this up again on Monday. So if any questions, I will be in the office all day tomorrow from 8:30 to 2:30, and I'll talk to everyone again